Kyrie to Chronicles of Ancient Greece, the podcast that delves deep into the fascinating history, myths, and legacies of the ancient Greek world. This is episode 13. What came before. Okay, people, it's been a while. I know that I'm not very reliable with my podcasting right now, but I'm trying to be better. It's just not that easy being a father, a husband, and a podcaster, all while having a full-time job that pays most of the bills. And since I'm trying to be a better father and husband than Kronos was, spoiler alert, but we'll get to it today, and the bills have to be paid somehow, plus I actually really like my job, something's gotta give. But fear not, I have started parental leave, so for the foreseeable future, podcasting has jumped up the queue at least one position. But enough blabbering from me from now. Let's get serious and briefly recap what we have talked about so far. Up until now, we've followed Greece from its earliest stirrings, through Bronze Age kingdoms, the thunderclap that was the Trojan War, past the rise of Sparta, and most recently, into the smoky, olive-scented birth of democratic Athens. But before we march into phalanx formations and clash with the Persians, before we stare down Pericles and watch cities burn in the Peloponnesian War, we need to take a step sideways. A big one. Because so far, we have been mostly dealing with actual history. Stuff we know about life in ancient Greece. Stuff that mostly can be archaeologically proven. You know, history and stuff. Sure, there have been some mythical leanings. The Trojan War, for example. But also when it comes to the founding of Athens and the occasional interference of the gods with Odysseus' journey home. Looking at you, Poseidon. All of the myths, though, have been pretty much walled off from the history of what actually happened. Here's the thing, though, because the Greeks didn't really see a wall between myth and history. For them, the gods weren't bedtime stories. They were woven into the soil, into the laws, into the very idea of what it meant to be a city, a citizen, a human being, even. So, to understand Greek society, its politics, its art, its philosophy, its wars, we first have to understand the stories they told us about the world. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into the mythological side of the Greek imagination. Not just the familiar tales of Hercules, though don't worry, we'll get to those. We're actually going deeper into the cosmic origin story, into the gods' family tree, into the chaos, violence, and strange poetry that the Greeks believed sat at the heart of existence itself. This is not a detour. This is the foundation. Because before there were hoplites and tyrants, before Athens and Sparta, there was Gaia, there was Uranus, there were titans, monsters, and a sky god named Zeus who just couldn't stop making things, well, complicated. So in this next series of episodes, we're stepping into the world of Greek myth. Not to escape history, but to understand the world the Greeks thought they were living in. So, welcome to what came before. In the beginning, and this is the Greek beginning, there was chaos. Now, Don't think of chaos as an explosion or a riot or a toddler that has just grabbed your cat's tail and scared the life out of said cat. Don't ask. That's modern chaos. To the Greeks, chaos meant something quieter and somehow even more unnerving. It meant the gap, a chasm, a yawning cosmic meh. Not darkness, not even silence, just unformed, undefined potential. A kind of divine shrug before existence got around to meaning anything. Hesiod, the ancient Greek poet who gave us the Theogony, which is basically the original Marvel Phase 1 of Greek mythology, opens with chaos as the first thing to come into being. And you know what's fascinating about that? It just comes. There's no cause, there's no creator, just boom. Now there's chaos. Which already tells you a lot about how the Greeks thought. For them, the universe didn't start with a plan. It wasn't built or designed, it emerged. It unfolded. Like a really weird dream you only half remember, but somehow it becomes your whole life. So, out of chaos, or maybe alongside it, depending on the version, came the first actual things in the universe. Real presences. Entities that weren't just a blank page, but had shape, force, and personality. They were the primordial beings. And no, they didn't look like humans with white robes and selfie-ready cheekbones. These were forces, real metaphysical stuff. First up, Gaia, Earth. Now, Gaia is not a goddess on Earth. She is Earth. When she shows up in Greek myth, she's land and body, mountain and mind. She's fertile, grounding, ever-giving, and, crucially, she doesn't need anyone's help to start creating. In fact, she begins birthing things all on her own. More on that in a minute. You'll notice something here too. The Greeks didn't start with the gods we all know and love. Zeus is not the OG creator of everything. Far from it. The Greeks started with the structure of reality itself. Earth is a character. Later myths will make her act like a person. She gets angry, she plots revenge, but at her root, Gaia is elemental. She's soil and stone and cave and seed. She is where things start taking root, both literally and mythically. Next up, we have Tartarus. Now, Tartarus is not hell, at least not hell in the Christian sense. Don't picture fire and pitchforks. Tartarus is more a kind of cosmic pit, an abyss even deeper than Hades, which at this time hadn't even been invented yet. It's hard to describe exactly what Tartarus is, except to say it's bad and very far down. Hesiod tells us that Tartarus is as far beneath Earth as Earth is beneath the sky, which basically is poet speak for it's pretty damn deep. Basically, if you dropped an anvil from the top of the cosmos, it'd fall for 9 days before landing in Tartarus. Fun fact, an anvil falling for 9 days is the Greeks' favorite measurement of distance, like an ancient banana for scale. Now, Tartarus is going to play a role later. It becomes a prison for monsters, a place of punishment, and a kind of mythological basement no one wants to visit. But for now, it's just there, part of the architecture of being. Third, we get Eros. Now, this one's important and confusing. And yes, this is where it gets confusing, so hang with me. Eros is not the cute winged baby with the diaper and the love arrows. That's later. That's the Roman Cupid, based on a much later, much cuter version of the Greek god. The original Eros, primordial Eros, is not about romance. He is the force of attraction, the glue of the cosmos, the spark that gets things moving. In Hesiod's words, Eros is the fairest among the deathless gods, and he loosens limbs and overcomes the mind and will of all gods and men. Translation: Eros is desire, but not just in the sexy way. He's the reason things want to combine. Atoms, lovers, plot points. Eros is what makes the gap of the chaos start to fill in. If Gaia is the ground and Tartarus is the depth, then Eros is the impulse that says, hey, what if we made something happen? He's also the first sign that the universe wants to create rather than just exist. And speaking of creating, Gaia isn't just hanging about being all earthy and grounded. In an act of spontaneous self-generation, she gives birth to Uranus. Yes, I hear you giggling out there. Focus, please. Far from childish, though, Uranus is the sky. And again, let's be clear, he is not in the sky, he is the sky. In Greek thought, especially early Greek thought, distinctions between body, place, and power were very blurry. Earth is Gaia. Sky is Uranus. These are places with personalities, and also personalities as places. It's weird, it's beautiful, and occasionally terrifying. So, Gaia creates Uranus. No partner, no fanfare. And in doing so, she completes a cosmic pairing. Earth below, sky above. A kind of sacred geometry. If you're into mythological symbolism, this is one of the oldest, most fundamental polarities in world mythology. Yin and yang, ground and firmament, the earth gives, the sky dominates. And here is where the Greeks got literal. Too literal. Uranus doesn't just hang out above Gaia admiring the view. He presses himself down on her. Remember, technically speaking, she is his mother. So close and so constantly that she can't move, can't breathe, and most importantly, can't give birth to the children growing inside her. Yes, let that sink in for a second. Uranus's weight, metaphorically and mythologically, represents stagnation, smothering, the fear of change. He's not actively malicious at first, he just doesn't want the universe to change shape. He likes it how it is, just him, Gaia, and the poetic silence of prehistory. But of course, Gaia, being the earth, is full of life. She's fertile by nature. And from her union with Uranus, a union that wasn't exactly consensual, she begins producing children. First come the Titans, 12 of them to be exact. 6 males, 6 females. Probably the only place in Greek myth with anything resembling gender balance. Their names are rich with symbolism. We have Oceanus, the titan of the endless river encircling the world, embodying the vast and mysterious waters beyond the known seas. Next up is Koios, associated with intelligence and the celestial axis, sometimes thought of as the titan of inquiry and the ordering of the heavens. Krios is the least defined titan, often linked to the constellations and the measures of the year, basically a kind of cosmic marker of time. Then we have Hyperion, the titan of heavenly light, sometimes credited as the father of Helios, the sun, Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn. Iapetus, connected with mortality and human striving, father of Prometheus, Epimetheus, Atlas, and Menoetius, and thus central to mankind's fate. Kronos, youngest titan and leader of the revolt against Uranus, later infamous for devouring his children to prevent being overthrown. On the side of the females, we have Theia, the titaness of sight and shining radiance, mother of the celestial trio, Helios, Selene, and Eos. Rhea, sister and consort of Kronos, mother of the Olympians who secretly saved Zeus from being swallowed. Themis, the titaness of divine order, law, and justice, often depicted as the personification of fairness and prophecy. Mnemosyne is the titaness of memory, mother of the 9 muses who gave voices to history, poetry, and the arts. Phoebe is associated with prophetic wisdom and the bright, pure light of the moon. She is the grandmother of Apollo and Artemis. Tethys is the sister wife of Oceanus, a maternal figure linked to the nourishing, life-giving aspects of fresh water and the rivers of the world. Each of the titans stands for something massive, something civilizational. Memory, oceans, justice. They don't meddle in human affairs because, well, spoiler, but humans don't even exist at this time. After the Titans, Gaia gives birth to a new set of children. And this is where Uranus starts showing his true colors. First, we meet the Cyclopes. You know them. Single eye, enormous size, gifted smiths. The later myths will make them monstrous, looking at you again, Odysseus, but in this early version, they're actually incredibly useful. They are the blacksmiths of the gods. They make weapons, they're artists of fire and forge just with one very large eye and basically zero social skills. And then, and I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing this correctly, the Hekatoncheires. And if you've never heard that word before, don't worry, neither had most of the Greeks. It means 100-handers. Each of them, well, surprise, surprise, has 100 arms and 50 heads. They are massive, terrifying, and completely unmanageable. And this is where Uranus freaks out. He sees these monstrous children, the Cyclopes and especially the Hekatoncheires, and instead of marveling at their cosmic weirdness, he decides, nope, too weird, too dangerous, let's put them back where they came from. So, completely normal reaction, he takes these divine infants and shoves them back inside Gaia. Which, what? It's anatomically questionable and symbolically horrifying. Now, Gaia doesn't just take this lying down. She is understandably furious. Not just because this is physically unbearable, which, yeah, but because it violates the natural order. She is the earth. She is supposed to bring forth life. Creation is her purpose. And now, her partner is trapping her in a cycle of stillbirth, a cycle of suppression? I don't think so. Because what does Gaia do when she gets angry? She plots. She does not lash out immediately. She doesn't scream. She plans, which is a very Greek quality. She becomes the architect of revolution. She creates a great sickle made of flint, because, of course, steel hasn't been invented yet, and also because flint is sharp, natural, and ancient. This sickle isn't just a weapon, it's a symbol of transformation. It's the tool that cuts the old from the new. Harvests, revolutions, circumcisions. Sickles are serious mythic business. Then Gaia approaches her Titan sons, the ones we mentioned earlier, and says in the Mother of All, I need a favor from you speeches. One of you needs to stand up to your father. I gave you life. I gave you the world. Now I need you to protect it. And as always happens when a parent needs a favor, the kids back away slowly. Well, not all of them. And parents with more than one child know this. It's always the youngest that is ready for action. Because in this case, the youngest, the sharpest, the boldest, says yes. Kronos. Now, Kronos is important, and not just because he's about to do something dramatic. His name is often, though not definitely, associated with chronos, which means time. That's not a coincidence. Kronos is the force that cuts, that divides, that moves history forward. He's not just Gaia's son. He's a new kind of god, one that understands strategy, one that is willing to act. So, next time Uranus comes down to Gaia, which remember is a regular thing, you could almost call it daily, Kronos will be lying in wait, sickle in hand. And when that moment comes, he ambushes his father and he castrates him. That's right. Uranus, embodiment of the sky, patriarch of the cosmos, gets his genitals sliced off with a stone sickle. Okay, let's pause for a second. Is it grotesque? Sure. Symbologically, though, it's perfect. Because this act is the severing of generative power. Kronos isn't just punishing his father, he's ending him. Ending his role in creation. Ending his control over Gaia. It's not death, but it's dethronement. And in myth, that's often worse. Now, of course, the story doesn't end there, and fans of ancient Greek mythology will know what happens next. Because Kronos hurls the severed genitals into the sea. Because what else do you do with divine body parts, right? And when those immortal bits hit the waves, the sea starts to churn. Foam gathers, and from that foam, from the mingling of sky's seed and sea's depth, something entirely new is born. Or rather, someone. Aphrodite. And yes, that Aphrodite. Goddess of love, desire, beauty, and all things irresistible. Not really coming from a loving family, actually, but rather coming from a lot of blood and salt and severed genitalia. Which tells us something about how the Greeks saw love. For them, it wasn't fluffy. It wasn't the Hallmark Channel. It was primordial, born of violence and longing and the mess of the world. Aphrodite is not just beautiful, she's powerful. She bends gods and mortals alike, and she emerges after the act of rebellion, as if love and beauty are what come once the old powers are broken. Back to Kronos, though. After the coup, the Titans rally around him. They are impressed, or at least relieved. The old tyrant is gone. Kronos has proven he's not just clever, but brave, brutal, and effective, which makes him the new ruler of the cosmos. With that, we enter what is often called the so-called Golden Age, an era of peace, prosperity, and, allegedly, no suffering. Mortals, if they existed at this time, lived in harmony. No aging, no pain, no taxes. But, and this is a huge but, Kronos is not exactly an improvement. Because when you get to the top by overthrowing your father, you tend to be a little paranoid about your own kids. And remember what I said about Kronos being associated with time? Time keeps moving. It doesn't rest. And Kronos knows that what was done to his father might just be done to him. So, what does he do? Well, first he gets married. Naturally to his sister. I mean, this is Greek myth. We don't do in-laws, we do same-laws. Her name is Rhea, and she's no side character. She's wise, she's maternal. She's probably more qualified to run the universe, frankly. Together, they have children. And Kronos, having learned absolutely nothing from his father, immediately begins swallowing them. Yep, swallowing. Because why not? One by one, as the child is born, Kronos opens his god-sized mouth and gulps them down like they're celestial oysters. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, who naturally took it personally. Just gone, inside, imprisoned in his belly. But Rhea's not having it, because what we also learn about Greek mythology is you don't mess with the goddesses. By the time Rhea's pregnant with her 6th child, she's had enough. And she hatches a plan. A Greek goddess always has a plan. Rhea gives birth in secret, hides the child, and presents Kronos with a swaddled rock instead. Now, this is normally where the plan would fail, but Kronos is apparently not the most detail-oriented god/father, and he swallows the rock, believing he's eaten his 6th child. That child's name? You guessed it, Zeus. It's always the youngest that causes trouble. So Zeus grows up in hiding, in caves, in forests, nourished by nymphs and divine goats, depending on which version you're reading. Yes, you heard that right. Goats. The most famous is Amalthea, the goat nurse of Zeus, who suckled the future king with god milk while he trained to one day overthrow his father. Oh, and for the record, this goat is so important that when she dies, Zeus places her in the sky as the constellation Capricorn. But Rhea doesn't just rely on mountain goats. She also enlists the Kurites, warriors or spirits depending on the version, who dance around the cave clashing their weapons so Kronos doesn't hear the baby cry. As Zeus grows up, he begins hatching a plot against his father to free his siblings. And for that, he needs allies. But Kronos has already swallowed all the other Olympians: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. That's a problem. So Zeus does something rare in myth. He gets help from someone who should be his enemy. He goes to Metis. Metis is a titaness, the goddess of wisdom and cunning thought. She's clever, subtle, and eventually becomes very important in Zeus's later reign. And if you know the myth, yes, she's the one he later swallows and from whom Athena is born, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, she brews up a potion, a vomit potion specifically. The ancient Greeks were nothing if not practical. Zeus gives it to Kronos. Some versions say it disguised as a cupbearer. Others say he just mixes it into a drink and boom. Kronos vomits up all 5 of Zeus' siblings, fully formed and immortal. Plus the rock, but we'll leave that to the side. And suddenly, Zeus isn't alone anymore. He's got Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon at his side, and they are pissed. And we all know what happens when Poseidon gets pissed. What follows is the so-called Titanomachy, a 10-year divine civil war between the old gods and the new. To the one side, we have the Olympians. Zeus, of course, lightning-slinging leader and resident thunder god. Or was it Lord of Thunder? We also have his siblings, Hera, later also his wife. Let's leave that to the side. Demeter, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hades. And his advisors, including Metis, goddess of cunning, and a few early allies who've read the room and just switched sides. On the other side, though, the Titans are no joke. They're massive, ancient, elemental beings who have been around since before time had a wristwatch. Now, their leader is of course Kronos, but many of his siblings do join him. For example, Iapetos, the father of Atlas and Prometheus, Hyperion, the Titan of Light, Koios, Krios, and Oceanos, though some myths say Oceanos sits this one out. He's a pacifist with a planet-sized river to manage after all. Now, this is not just an old versus new grudge match. It's actually themes in combat. The Titans represent raw, ancient power, the primal forces of the universe. The Olympians represent intelligence, planning, adaptability. They are the future. And the future is clever enough to know they need help. Zeus, being a good general, turns to the beings who've been wronged by Kronos, the Hekatoncheires and the Cyclopes. Remember them? The 100-handed giants and the one-eyed smiths? Uranus stuffed them into Tartarus because he was afraid of their power, and Kronos left them there. Zeus, though, unlike his predecessors, sees their potential. So he frees them. That's right. Zeus ventures into Tartarus, the underworld prison of gods, and liberates the old, terrifying forces of chaos. And what does he get in return? Presents. The Cyclopes forge 3 mythic weapons. The Thunderbolt, obviously for Zeus. The Trident, for Poseidon, which lets him shake the seas. And the Helm of Darkness, for Hades, making him literally invisible. And symbolically, it puts him in charge of the unseen world. This is a turning point. The Olympians now not only have the moral high ground, hey, I mean, we freed the guys you locked up, but they have divine artillery. Mountains hurled across the sky, oceans boiled, earthquakes on demand. The sun disappears, returns, vanishes again. The very fabric of the universe tears and stitches itself back together. This is mythic warfare on planetary scale. The Hecatoncheires, with their 100 arms, become the Olympians' artillery units. Basically, each one is like a walking catapult, hurling boulders the size of continents. Watch out for those rocks. And Zeus? He's in the sky, raining thunder and fire. It's not just chaos, it's apocalyptic spectacle. With this, the Greeks were painting a picture. The world was not built gently. It was forged in struggle, shaped through conflict, and refined through choice. Because, spoiler alert, in the end, Zeus wins not because he's stronger, but because he's smarter. He's willing to do what Kronos never did: make alliances, forgive, share power. Well, at least for now. The Titans, though powerful, start to lose ground. They can't adapt. They represent an older world, one that doesn't evolve, doesn't share, doesn't bend. So, they break. Zeus and his siblings defeat the Titans one by one until Kronos himself is overthrown. Now though, the big question: what do you do with an ancient order once you've beaten it? Well, Zeus doesn't kill the Titans. That's important. He imprisons them in Tartarus, the same deep abyss from which he rescued his allies. But now, it's his abyss. And he appoints the Hecatoncheires as the new jailers. That is symbolism with a capital S. Because with the Titans gone, Zeus now divides the world with his brothers. He himself gets the sky, Lord of Thunder, remember? Poseidon gets the sea, deep, unpredictable, full of power, taking things personally. And Hades gets the underworld, the silent kingdom of the dead. Well, there's one thing left though: Earth. That is neutral ground, shared by all gods and mortals alike. Okay, let's exhale for a second. We've made it from the yawning void of chaos, through generations of divine dysfunction, into a somewhat ordered cosmos, ruled by Zeus and the Olympians, with Titans locked away and reality finally under new management. So, what's the point of all of this? Was it just a wild divine soap opera? The answer is, there is a point, of course. But it's also kind of a soap opera. Because if there's one thing Greek mythology does really well, it's this: it entertains while it explains. So, explain. What were the Greeks actually trying to say with these stories? Now, I know what you're thinking, and you're obviously right. They weren't just telling bedtime tales for ancient insomniacs. They were doing cosmic philosophy, just without the footnotes. Let's briefly rewind to the very first scene. Chaos. Not like an explosion and panic chaos. More like emptiness, the gap, the not yet. What the Greeks are saying is, the universe didn't begin as a clean act of creation. It emerged, slowly, uneasily, spontaneously. No creator god just saying, "let there be light." But there was just stuff. Some of it sentient, some of it elemental, all of it deeply weird. And that's the point. The Greeks didn't believe the world was born perfect. They believed it had to struggle into shape. Order didn't fall from the sky. It was built through conflict. Now, you might think that this all sounds rather dark, but it's just realism. Greek style, of course. I mean, look around you today. The world is messy, unpredictable, cruel, and also beautiful. That's not a bug. That's the whole system. If in ancient Greece it feels like the gods behave like petty aristocrats squabbling at a family reunion, that's not a flaw in the myth. That's intentional. The Greeks weren't trying to say their gods were morally perfect. In fact, they weren't even trying to make them good, but they were making them familiar. Zeus is powerful, but he's also insecure. Kronos might be clever, but he's paranoid. Gaia might be nurturing on the one hand, but also deeply manipulative. Uranus is distant and oppressive. Why? Because the myths mirror human life. The cosmos isn't ruled by a flawless being on a throne. It's ruled by complicated forces in constant negotiation. Just like every city-state, every family, every alliance in the Greek world. Greek myth doesn't say, be like the gods, try to achieve perfection. It says, understand the world the gods reflect. Now, there's obviously more, and I'm sure that by now you have recognized that the Greek creation myth always follows the same pattern. God comes to power, he fears his children will overthrow him, he tries to stop it, he fails, one of his children takes over. Repeat, 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 endlessly. It's called the succession myth, and it's one of the oldest mythological patterns we know. Not just in ancient Greece, but across Indo-European cultures themselves. You'll find versions in Hittite myths, Vedic stories, even in bits of the Hebrew Bible. The Greek version, though, adds a twist: awareness. Because by the time Zeus takes the throne, he is aware of the pattern. He does not want to become Kronos. He makes a point of sharing power with his siblings. He consults prophecy. He listens to counsel. He creates institutions like justice and fate rather than ruling by a brute force. And that's the lesson. And I think it's a lesson that we should all know today. And it doesn't just apply to ruling. To break the cycle, you have to understand the cycle. You have to be aware. Now, even then, Zeus isn't immune. In fact, prophecy will one day warn him that a child might overthrow him too. And spoiler alert, yes, we'll get there in another episode. Now, by the time we reach the end of the Titanomachy, the world seems stable. Zeus reigns, the monsters are locked away, the Olympians have divvied up the domains. But of course, the Greeks never believed that this was permanent. They understood, perhaps better than most cultures, that stability is temporary. The gods are constantly challenged. The world is always one storm away from unraveling. In fact, the Greeks didn't really have a concept of the end of the world the way later cultures did. The Greeks had cyclical time, not linear. Power rises, falls, shifts. Even Olympus isn't safe forever. Which, if you think about it, is kind of the whole point. You don't build a myth to help tell people everything is fine in ancient times. You build a myth to help people live in a world where everything isn't fine. But it's still possible to find meaning, pattern, and sometimes even beauty. Okay, so there we have it. The origin of the world Greek edition. From chaos to cosmos, from Earth Mother to Sky Tyrant to Thunder God, or Lord of Thunder. But if you think the drama stops here, you're very obviously sorely mistaken, because this is just the prologue. Remember, the Olympians haven't even met us yet. Humans and mortals? We're still just a glimmer in Prometheus's rebellious eye. There's an entire mythological economy waiting to emerge. Sacrifices, punishments, prophecies, floods, hubris, golden ages, bronze ages, bad decisions, worse punishments, and that's just Tuesday in Greek myth. We haven't even met Pandora. We haven't seen how Zeus handles humanity's first moral blunders. Spoiler alert, poorly. Because this isn't just mythology. It's the ancient world's answer to the big question, what the hell is going on and how do we survive it?